Hi, I'm Adam and welcome to First Man Photography. Today we are going to be doing some very interesting photography, something that you could easily try at home, especially during this period of very wet weather that we're having here in the UK. If you don't want to get out and do landscape photography outdoors, then getting into a bit of macro photography, a bit of water drop photography in your home, in the dry, where it's comfortable and warm, then this is the video for you. We're going to specifically today be testing out the MIOPS water kit or water splash kit, whatever they want to call it. I've generally used the Splash Art 2 kit, which is what I've created all my water drops with. The MIOPS has really been picking up a bit of attention. A lot of people have asked me about it, so I've gone ahead and bought the kit to test it out myself and just see how it does basically. So what we'll do is we'll get set up. I'll show you a few bits and pieces of how we do water drop photography. We'll put that MIOPS system to the test, produce some interesting images hopefully, then do a little bit of post-processing with a few really nice tips for your post-processing in there as well. And then we'll hopefully be able to create a really nice final print at the end of it. So without further ado, let's get set up and then do some water drop photography. Right, let's go. Right, I'm all set up with the MIOPS splash kit on here. It does come with this sort of clamp that you can attach to a tripod, which is quite handy, but I've got it set up attached to this clamp stand. With water drop photography, it is important obviously to have a camera, and a macro lens is what is going to allow you to get in close enough to fill your frame with those water drops. You can obviously use a kit lens. You might have to try and get your camera a bit closer and then crop in post-production, but a macro lens is really going to help. It's pretty much vital then to use a flash for this. I've got this relatively cheap flash trigger attached to the top of my camera, and then some wireless triggers on the flashes themselves. I've got a 2 flash setup here. One here, which is going to light up the water drop, and then another one just at the front here, which is lighting up the background. The trick with water drop photography though, when it comes to your flashes, is it's actually the flash that freezes the action. So with your camera, the settings are very straightforward. You want to have your camera set to the flash sync speed of the camera. In my case, with this Canon, it's 1/200th of a second. I then play generally around f11 and f16 for the settings. You want to be in manual mode, manual focus as well, which we'll talk about in a second. With your speed lights, you want to have them in manual mode as well. And they want to be at a low power. The reason for that is the low power produces a much faster flash. Remember, it's that flash that's freezing the action. I've got this one at the front set at 1/64th power and the background one set at 1/128th. They're fairly low powered, so I've upped my ISO to 640, and that's giving me a nice, bright, clear image. So when it comes to focusing, you want to start getting your drop going, which I have done already here with the MIOPS. We're going to pop it into AV mode for a second and get our pencil and fire the water dropper off like that. And then just place the pencil into the water where the drop is hitting the surface like that. And then we go to our camera and we want to manual focus onto that pencil, just like that. That's looking pretty good. And we're pretty much ready to shoot. I'm going to play around with a few things today. We're going to start off though with plain water because I've literally never used this MIOPS before, and I have heard there are a few people out there that say you can't use anything thicker than water. Now, adding xanthan gum to your water drop mixture is pretty much vital to change the consistency of the water to allow you to get those beautiful crown effects. So if I can't do that with this system is definitely not going to be for me. So I've got it set up just with water in this tube at the moment. I then have a mixture of just plain water and xanthan gum mixture in the bottom. So that's still going to be a little bit thicker, which might help me out, hopefully. Very plain setup to start with, colourless water, colourless bath, and then a blue background. And that's just going to give me a chance to figure out how to use the MIOPS system. So I've got it connected to the camera with the wire here, which sort of leads around into the MIOPS. The Bluetooth connects to the MIOPS with my phone. So then when I press the button, the MIOPS system should fire the camera off. And the camera then sets the flashes off like this. Whoa, that was a big one. It's then just a case of playing around with the MIOPS system on your phone. That's exactly the same as any other system. If you change the size of the first drop, and the size of the first drop will affect how tall your water drop is. The second one, you then put a delay on, so that comes out a moment later, and you want the first drop to hit the water, bounce back up, just as the second one is coming down, and it creates that collision. So I'm just going to play around for a minute with this initial setup to get an idea of how this works. Like the other systems I've used before, it is very similar in terms of you've got to play around until you find what works for you. And it's different every time, depending on the consistency of the water, the height that you've got, the dropper above the bath. So I'm just going to play around with that for a bit and see what happens. Okay, there we go. The red liquid with the xanthan gum in it is now primed, and it is quite thick, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's still just plain water. That will start to get red as those drops come through, but let's just go with it. Let's see what happens. So let's just have a little go. I definitely saw a collision on that one. Didn't capture it though, so I might have to adjust the delay. Once you've got xanthan gum in the solution as well, bubbles start to form, and they really spoil the image, I think. It's always a good idea between each shot to just clear the bubbles away from the surface. So let's just go with a few more. And I'm seeing the collisions. Oh, and I've captured a really nice one there. Let's have a look at that again. Yeah, nice stem, nice collision. So just keep firing. Another one there. Yes. But I'm not quite getting the height that I want, so I'm going to start playing around to introduce or make the first drop a little bit bigger, which will make the water splash up a bit more, getting it to fill my frame. Now, I do like the MIOPS drop system, but I do have a couple of reservations that I don't think you have with the Splash Art 2. The main one, I think, is the fact that this nozzle is plastic. It doesn't have the sharp edge of the metal nozzle on the Splash Art 2. And because of that, I feel like I'm losing accuracy. I get a set where I can see a water drop happening, and then just something different happens every single time. Now, that does happen on the Splash Art 2 as well, but the consistency of the drops is not as good with this. And that's my big bugbear, really. Having said that, I am still getting some collisions, so it is still working, and it is cheaper than the Splash Art 2 as well. So, and I quite like the setup with the tube. It's quite easy to sort of set up and use, and it does work relatively well with the app. But the app is my other bugbear, because although it works well, the system does work really well. It was easy to set up. You can have 3 or 4 drops as well, which can just increase your levels of creativity. However, not having that physical unit to control the water drops, which I have on the Splash Art 2, I feel like I'm losing a bit of that ability to react instinctively almost. So I've got to go into the app, into the menu, change the drop size or change the delay. Whereas on the Splash Art 2, I can just use the knobs without looking at it. And then I feel I'm losing a bit of speed, but that's probably something that not most people are going to be bothered with. I don't know. But I am still getting some results. It's just taking a little bit longer. This is obviously my first go with this system as well, so I think it will improve as I become more familiar with it. I'm enjoying using it though. It's just the same as any time you do water drop photography. It can be frustrating, but I do feel like that plastic nozzle is holding me back. If we could have a metal one, I think I'd be really happy with it, because I think that would increase the level of consistency of the drops, which is what you need to then make the adjustments. So I'm just going to keep having a play until I get a shot that I'm happy with, and then we'll head back up to the office to post-process an image. So after a water drop photography shoot, one of my favourite things is getting them back on the big screen, because it's at that point that you first get to feel the impact of what you have created. Now, on this occasion, using the MIOPS, I just have not had the consistency that I'm used to. Now, all the time with water drop photography, I'm probably getting about 10% of my images that are somewhat usable. You shoot a lot of frames and don't get very much back in return, just because of the nature of the water and how it works and stuff. But today, we can look down the screen here, and there really isn't all that many shots that are usable. So I'm just going to flag the ones that I feel are somewhat usable. Let's just have a very brief look at them. That one, yeah, it's pretty nice. Not quite in focus, maybe. Yeah, I mean, that's okay, but you can see how when you don't have the solution in there, or the xanthan gum in there, you get these drops spraying off all over the place. I think you lose a bit of the detail and the overall symmetry and smoothness to it with that one. I do like that one. That's quite an interesting one. Yeah, that's quite nice. This one is really interesting, but I don't like it going off the top of the screen. That one's okay. I quite like that one, but it's too close to the top of the frame. That one's quite interesting, actually. Yeah, some nice colours in that one. I've edited that a little bit, but look at that bubble. Just for me, that absolutely ruins it. It just pulls too much attention away from where I want your attention to be, which is on the water drop. Personally, that's a deal breaker. For me, I quite like that one, but it's not quite right. This one, I think, is probably the winner. So let's bring that up. That's looking pretty good. It's a nice shape. It's an interesting shape. It's just not quite tall enough, though. That's the thing. I much prefer it when it fills the frame. And with the macro lens, you can do that if you can get that drop to go up high enough. But we're just going to crop it on this occasion because it's still going to work quite well. And this would be similar if you were using a kit lens or a 24 to 70mm lens. So let's just bring up the crop tool very quickly and just get it down to something that's going to fill the frame. Something like that. And that immediately looks really, really nice in terms of composition. That's the sort of shot I want. I'm just going to drag it up from the bottom because you can see the edge of the dish just a touch. So I'm going to crop some of that out as well. And that still looks really nice. Nice and clean, nice shape all around. That's the kind of image that I love when it comes to water drop photography. Right, let's go through it very quickly and make some very quick adjustments. Now, a top tip when you're editing any image, particularly if you're in the rain or you have a bit of water around and you're getting little spots on your lens, they're very easy to take out with the spot removal tool. Now, you just hit the spot removal tool up here, or you can hit Q on your keyboard as a shortcut. And sometimes they can be quite difficult to see. But if we're going for a little bit of perfection in our post-processing, all you need to do is take the dehaze slider and just put it up to 100%. And what that does is allow you to see the spots a lot easier. See, like this one up here, now we can just really easily and really quickly get rid of all of them. Might not get them all during this little bit here, but there's a couple of drops there. And yeah, that doesn't look too bad. One or two more, just like that. And there we go. Right, now all you need to do is just reset the dehaze, and there we go. Nice, clean image for you. So now I'm just gonna make a few changes. Contrast boost always works really, really well. And then we can just add a touch of clarity in as well, and then drag the highlights down just a touch. Shadows up a little bit just to raise these black areas here. So I'm just gonna drag the white balance down a little bit here. You've got so much control over your color with water drop photography. I'm going to give it a little vibrance boost, a little saturation boost as well, hit hue, and I just want to change that blue color a little bit more. Not that way, but I want to make it a little bit darker like that. Then go to luminance again on the blue and just bring the brightness of that blue down a touch, and that now looks really, really good. Just briefly on the image, I would prefer it if this edge of this water drop was a little bit smoother. See these little notches here? That's because the consistency of the actual liquid was not as thick as I would have liked. But as I was putting thicker and thicker liquid into the MIOPS, it couldn't handle it. And I think it's because of that plastic nozzle. If you imagine the edge of a cup or a pan, if you pour it out and the edge is really curved and smooth, you end up getting drips all over the place. If you've got a sharp bit of metal or something like that, it comes out, it's much easier to pour. And I think that's the same with this water dropper. With the Splash Art 2, with this sharp metal nozzle, it seems to just work better with the thicker liquids. But I can't complain, it's a nice image. That's what I'm now going to print. So I'll just get that set up for a print. Every time I print my water drops, I will just add in a third of a stop or something of exposure to compensate for the loss of the backlight on the screen. And that usually works out as a really nice print. So I'm just gonna go ahead and print that, and then we'll take a look at that in a second. So here we go, the print is done, and I think that looks really rather nice. It's always just so nice to see your images printed out, and particularly water drop photography, because like I said earlier, it's just like, it's the sort of thing that hardly anyone has seen before. Overall impressions of the MIOPS splash kit is that it's got some pros and some cons. The pros are that it's a really quite straightforward bit of kit to use, and it's also one of the cheapest and now probably the most well-known splash kits on the market, and you can produce some really nice images with it. The app also, I think, just a very simple redesign to have all those controls just on a dial on the single screen, so I can make fine adjustments really quickly, would make a huge world of difference. So yeah, overall, I do enjoy the kit, but I'd just like to see a couple of little tweaks to it to really make it as good as anything else on the market. So that's my overall impression of it. I will put a link to it down below, along with the kit that I normally use, to give you an opportunity to compare those two things if you're considering making the purchase. If you are going to buy the MIOPS kit, I would recommend you buy it from Amazon, because I bought it directly from MIOPS. It was slightly more expensive, particularly for the cables. I also ended up having to pay import tax, and it cost me about another, I don't know, £30 or something. So, and then also make sure you check out the Lightroom subscription to really get into that water drop photography masterclass. It's very different to anything I've put on YouTube. It's about 2.5 hours of in-depth content. There's about 9 chapters covering everything from how to make the solution and how to shoot it with a very basic setup where you don't need any splash kits, and then also using the Splash Art 2 kit as well. We get right into it in detail, and I think you will love it. So if you head to the link down below, check out the Lightroom. For $5.99 a month, you can subscribe, you can cancel at any time, you get the full water drop photography masterclass, landscape photography masterclass, and loads of other tutorials that I'm putting up all the time. So please do check it out if you want to know more. Also check out my other water drop videos if you've never seen them before, and I'll see you on another video very, very soon. I've got another one coming out on Tuesday, actually, which I'm excited about this week, an extra video for you. So I hope to see you then. I'm Adam. This is First Man Photography, out.